Welcome to lesson 5.3. In this lesson, we are going to talk about parabolas. Now, in 5.1, we already kind of went over some parabolas, so I would like to start down here with reviewing all the vocabulary that we talked about in 5.1. So, first off, we have the vertex. That is the most extreme point of the parabola. So either the lowest point, the highest point, or if you have sideways parabolas, the farthest left or the farthest right. That's always your vertex, the most extreme point. And we always write that vertex as h, k. Then we have this distance p, is what we call it. And p is given to you in the equation that I'm going to show you in just a little bit. And this p is the distance from the vertex to the focus. It is also the distance from the vertex to what we call the directrix. Notice that the vertex is always exactly halfway between the focus and the directrix. That's one way we can find it. So then that introduces our next two words. We have our focus. The focus is always inside the parabola. Always, always, always. And it is always p distance away. Then we have the directrix, which is always a straight line that is outside the parabola. And the directrix is also p distance away from the vertex. So, just a little note, if we have a sideways parabola, the focus would go in here, and the directrix would be a vertical line that goes out there. And of course, your vertex is always perfectly halfway between them. Now, we only have one last vocabulary word that we're going to add to this page. So we have our focus, we have our p distance, we have our vertex, we have our directrix. The last one that we talked about in 5.1 is called the latus rectum. And the latus rectum is the width of the parabola at the focus point. So from the focus, let's say I have a latus rectum of 20. So that means I would be 10 out on each side from the focus. Or if I have a latus rectum of 3, that would mean it would be 1.5 out on each side of the focus. And that determines how wide or skinny your parabola is. The latus rectum will actually always be exactly 4p. So 4 times this distance there will be the latus rectum. So that is all of our vocab with parabolas that we're going to be talking about. Let's look at our equation. So here's the equation for a parabola. We also have y minus k squared equals 4px minus h. We'll talk about the difference between those in just a moment. But notice that for both of these, we have h, k. That's your vertex. So very similar to when we did circles. We take the numbers in here, flip the sign, and that will give you your vertex point. You'll also notice right here, there's my latus rectum. So that 4p, that number in front of those parentheses, that's how wide your latus rectum is. Now let's talk about why we have two equations. In this equation we have x squared, in this equation we have y squared. So to help us with this, I would like you to draw this helpful little chart. And here we're going to have where the x is squared, here we're going to have where the y is squared. Now basically why we have different equations. If the x is squared, your parabola is going to go up or down. If the y is squared, your parabola is going to point left or right. How we know which direction it is we look at 4p and see if it's positive or negative. If 4p is positive and x is squared, your parabola is going to face up. If 4p is negative and your x is squared, now your parabola faces down because of the negative. Now for y squared, if we have a positive 4p with y squared, that opens to the right. And if we have a negative 4p and y squared, that opens to the left. So that should be all the information you need to know about parabolas. In the next video, we'll actually start to apply all this information to practice graphing these.